And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new episode of Today's Youth. And today we're glad to be joined by Rana Salah. She's a research assistant at the Genomics Lab at AUC. Thank you for joining us, Rana.
Thank you.
Rana, to start with, tell me first, you specialized, you majored actually in biology. So why did you choose this field of study? I mean, too scientific.
Yeah, I joined actually from STEM schools, so that's why I had like more of a background around science and technology. And basically, I joined biology at AUC because I was looking for an integration between. We are usually separating science and engineering, so I was looking for a bridge to like connect both of them. And then I found that there was a minor in bioinformatics there at AUC besides the biology itself. And then we had the specialization itself in sciences, yes, but you can apply the engineering to it.
Yeah.
And I take it a step further to work more in synthetic biology. So integrating computational biology and synthetic biology was my main interest, so that's why I selected to use it.
Right. At STEM schools, you mainly study sciences. I mean, you're focused on sciences. You don't study art at all.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, I feel that it was somehow an issue at the beginning when I joined like AUC, because we were mainly like working so heavily on the content of the sciences and technology content. However, like when we joined AUC, it's more of the social sciences itself. But still, when we were working on STEM, we were integrating the sciences to the business part, for example. So we are basically working in capstone, so you know how you deal with different audience and how you deal with the community needs itself. So on some level, it still connects to the social world. However, you don't know basically what are the different techniques that you can deal with it. However, I feel that it emphasized on me how we can like actually integrate the work that can be done on the lab and take it a step further, either through transitional medicine, for example, to the hospitals, or either through like a business plan to be like covered in the community itself, for people actually to know more about sciences and technology. And just if you are not from this background, you just ignore it. No, they actually can be integrated for it, because it's like in their daily lives. So
right. Rana, you're also an advocate for revolutionizing medicine. Would you tell our viewers what exactly is revolutionizing medicine?
Yes, so basically
most people are not aware of this.
Yeah, so basically I'm more into how the new trends of precision health and the personalized medicine are growing. It's more of the new type of medicine that's gonna be there, because we are not basically no more working just for giving treatments that may be harmful for some people, and it's just limited for some of the people, that it's not more as efficient as it was as before. And now we are having more access for how we can like have the access to the genetics of the patients themselves. So we are having a reference genome, for example, and we can compare, like if we're doing a genetic test for each of the patients, they can check if they have the genes that can grow a certain disease, so we can work specifically for them, and we have like specialized treatments developed for them themselves. And that's part of the translational medicine itself, that we are not having people that are working in science alone, people are working in medicine alone, or people working in biomedical engineering alone, for example. We are just integrating all of them. So basically you go from the part of the sciences where you are integrating research, for example, on the genetics level or on the microbiome level, and you are getting the analyses or the results of the tests themselves. And then you are giving it back to the people who are working on pharmacology to develop the treatments and doing the drug therapies. And actually nanotechnology can even be part of this in order to have like drug delivery that is targeted for certain cells or people who are having certain diseases. And then it goes back to try it actually for the clinical trials on the level of the hospital, and we see how it actually affects the patients. And the same part you can integrate, for example, machine learning, and you are getting here the parts where the engineers can integrate. So for example, because you're having many issues in the diagnosis, for example, for the doctors, so you can integrate machine learning in order to help them in the diagnosis process itself, if it's just scanning like the tests or the results, in order to see if certain defects are common across like here, or actually only in Egypt, or from across the world itself. You are getting like a data set that is wide enough in order to have a larger span, and then it can detect for you. It helps the physician himself in order to like detect if the patient
So
is
it's,
healthy
it's
or
a
not.
sort of coordination between the different fields in order to come out with one result in for the patient. I mean,
Yes.
right. You also have some publications in prestigious journals. Would you tell me what were the topics?
So basically, I was working first on, during my first paper was on during the pandemic. It was on COVID-19. So we're basically trying to find an easier diagnosis method than the PCR, because some people find it like it's so hard for them or it's so expensive. So we were trying to do like another board that can work on the blood itself, but in order to take a sample from the blood, you need to know if there is biomarkers that exist. We were looking for the biomarkers, and we were mainly targeting like the mRNAs and the RNAs that can exist in the blood. So that was basically the work of the first paper. It was based on bioinformatics and both of them. The second one was more about like the biosynthetic gene clusters, and it's more about finding new antimicrobial resistance genes that help us in developing new antibiotics, because it's actually like so hard to find new ones, and it's causing like a serious issue, because antibiotic resistance is like leading to a lot of deaths recently.
Right. Rana, you also represented Egypt in different international events. What were those events, and how did you benefit from these participations?
So I actually started participating before, like in my first year before I joined AUC, after I graduated from STEM schools. It was basically like mainly targeted to, I was super into like the environment and not only the sciences that are related to the biology part. So I was more interested to find, we were working basically on the ocean, like the pollution caused by plastics in the oceans. It was in Indonesia, and it was basically like people from all over Asia, like in high schools and also like in the first 2 years of universities, they were gathered in order to find like solutions about the issue of the pollution. And the camp actually, it had like Nobel laureates, and they were more targeted that we think in different ways. So there is not only one like solution. We were basically working in either we recycle or we redesign the thing from initially, or we clean the oceans, or it was like more general on how you can think innovatively. And we were having not only like exploring or explaining the results that we had and working in a collaborative team. It was more also for culture nights and how you can explore the new cultures, and that's one of my targets, how you can see how peoples are different and they're still similar. So people are all working for like being a global citizen, and this like concept of global citizen was more when I went for volunteering in Ukraine. It was for a longer period, and basically we were having people working all together also on the environment level, but on working directly with the community. We were going to the audience, people who are still children and people who are elderly people, and we were giving them the tools that they can use in their daily lives in order to build healthy routines for them to be like more into the environment and more into the sustainability. And that was more of the work that we are actually like communicating with the startups in order to get, that was also eye-opening, how you can get the social board or the entities and NGOs to work with you on an idea that was in the science, because if you're having just the work in the lab or in the paper and it's not carried out to the community, it hasn't any efficiency. My final representation was recently in 2021. It was in Uganda, and it was more of a formal like scientific conference where it's more on also on the new field of synthetic biology and how we can actually like grow it, and what are the opportunities and threats that can be found in the Egyptian or African regions generally. And my part was mainly like I was giving a lecture about how we can develop new solutions and our own experience of working in this field in Egypt.
Right. We're going to be talking more about exploring cultures through the international events that you just mentioned and you've attended in different countries, but right after the short break. Welcome back once again with my guest Rana Salah. Rana, you were talking before the break about visiting different countries and participating in different international events. You've been to Uganda, Indonesia, and Ukraine. You participated in international events in those three countries. Tell me the significance of mingling with different types of people, with different cultures in such events. What did it add to you? I mean, you have your own ideas, you have your own way of thinking, and you've dealt with different people from other cultures, totally different. How did this affect you positively, definitely? Tell me more about that.
So yeah, so basically it was a huge experience for me and an eye-opening one, because when you deal with different cultures, for me it was actually that I found that they are more of having a lot of similarities together. You can see the differences on the basic parts where they are just in their daily routines or in their food and the basic, like the culture itself, the traditions. However, on the most important part for me is that when I was working in these events, I was leading like small groups of people from different nationalities, and in this part it's not more of like the nationality itself, like considering the differences, but maybe the culture is just like playing part in defining how the person thinks itself. So when you are working in a team, you have to identify how people like actually see the things, if they are just considering more of the practical parts more of, or if they just focus on the theoretical part and they want to do all the theoretical work first in order to have a plan ahead, or if they are just working on how we can take it to a business side and they are working from this side, not from the scientific part. So it's more of knowing what is the part of each team members that can like evolve and what is the most rich part for them. And for me, generally, it was more of like, and you start to accept all the differences, that you know that generally all people are different and still their differences add to the greater good. So they are having different skills that you need to use, because if we were all similar, for example, we wouldn't have been like that rich, and you wouldn't be able to get all of the exciting ideas or interesting ideas that can emerge when you are just brainstorming. So it's more of like people usually, like when they are in like international events, they are trying to mingle and to show that the more of the professional side. But I think that integrating the culture is very important, because when you are talking, for example, for in a problem definition board, or we are starting a design thinking workshop, when you are having or you're talking or representing the problems that actually emerge in your country or your culture, it's more of like how we work in order to solve the actual problems, and not like just focus on the things that are from away. So we are talking about a problem in Egypt. It's more when you are talking here about the things that is representative in each of the countries that I went. When people were talking from their own culture, they know more. So when you are able to identify the problem, it's easier to solve it. So it's more of the critical thinking like skills and the leadership skills that were really developed, and how I actually deal with like different people on the personal level. That's how
right. Rana, this would lead us to talk about the international youth forums that were taking place here in Egypt.
Yes.
Several international youth forums took place. How far do you think that this would be empowering and encouraging to youth in creating a sort of a bond among youth from different countries and culture together?
Yes, that's actually a huge step, because when you are having that in your country, it's a huge opportunity to meet people from different nationalities, and it's an actual like physical step that you get to know people on the real side, that you're just not watching stuff or joining them online. You are having this on ground, and you are dealing and you're having conversations and discussions. So I feel that's very important in order to like have people who are mingling together in this in our country, and generally the topics that are discussed are like really interesting for people to talk from the like the discussions on the social board or scientific board, or like sharing the new technologies, or just sharing the problems and aims of the people in the country. So I feel that it's an important part both for the soft skills itself for people here in the Egyptian youth, and also second part for them to apply what they have studied in the universities or they have applied in their work in the real ground, and they can learn from the different or the real life applications that have been applied worldwide, and we are still trying, for example, to like take their experiences and apply it here. So it's very rich and helpful for all the youth.
Right. Rana also elected as a coordinator for Egypt in a Global Health Network. Tell me more about this election, and what does it add to you on the personal and career levels?
So basically, they were having a network of more of like coordinator for each country, and it's basically more of integrating how we can have like people not only, for example, in Cairo. It's more of people on all the cities and the governorates around Egypt in order to be integrated more in the health security. So the topics of biosecurity and biosafety are actually really rich currently. So what's happening is that we are just not working about how it's useful to work on the technical board itself or the scientific board itself. We are more of how to make it safe for how the work we do actually impacts the world. So that's what we were mainly like developing and working on the workshops. So basically we are more targeted towards how we can do like products, or like when we are integrating, for example, the genetic engineered boards or whatever, that it doesn't have an impact on the agriculture boards or the safety of the technicians that are working, or we are not harming the environment generally. So it's really important for people who are working on the biology fields or the biotechnology fields to know the important parts, these important parts and techniques in order to have a safe environment.
Right. Rana, we have some photos for you here to comment on, if you have a look at this on the screen.
Yeah, so basically that was when I was a sophomore, and it wasn't the very first like labs that I joined. It was mainly working on developing like more new biomarkers for ovarian cancer. It's more of developing the diagnosis that's happening there. It was a very enriching experience for me because it's the very first time that I worked on actual biological research, and it was very enriching that I work on the biomarkers field because it can take the diagnosis part to a whole nother level. So yeah, for this part we were actually on the culture night on Ukraine. It was actually joining people from different nationalities, and we were having people representing each country, and it was more of meddling not only the scientific ideas or the work on the social side or the scientific side. It's more of knowing the people themselves, their customs and their like food, the traditional food, traditional music. It's more of presenting the cultures themselves, and it was also open for the audience to see how the group actually included different people representing the environmental board. And this board also, it was more about going through the sea sighting boards in Ukraine, and how it actually is really important that you integrate history itself in your story, and in targeting different audience. That when we were doing a campaign, for example, that's related to the environment, that we are not only like focused on the people who are active, we are also tackling other people. This board was from STASA conference, and it was about developing the curriculum for STEM schools. And I was sharing there my experience after I graduated, about what I actually learned there and how STEM have built my own personal skills, and also my like knowledge generally, and how it introduced a lot of new fields for us. So we were just like basically explaining and sharing our own experiences, me and other like students, in order to like represent the strength points in order to be kept in the new curricula, and also like discuss what can have been done better.
Thanks.
So yeah, this and Uganda, it was a conference about synthetic biology. It was the first one to be done under supervision of the Association for Symbio Africa. And basically we were working, this was a panel discussion discussing the opportunities and threats for synthetic biology in the field. And we were more focusing like how we can actually start to develop people who are having the knowledge itself, because we are having people who are graduating from only biology or engineering, and we need to integrate this more in order to turn into synthetic biology. And for this board, it was also in Uganda, and it was more of the main universities there, and they were showing us the labs. And actually it was a new experience for me, because they were from different like labs working in biology that is not like casually found here. So we were more about their experiences and how they actually appreciate the history of their universities.
Great. Rana, you also led the AUC team for genetic engineering, where you received the silver medal, right?
Yes, it was basically a competition known as AGEM. It's an international genetic engineering machine competition, and it's actually the first major step that was done initially in MIT in order to like make people more into synthetic biology and how they can apply their work. And we took it a step further to actually start it at AUC, and we were basically working on during the pandemic. Although it was online, however, it was still a huge experience to work through how we can develop a new therapeutic treatment for COVID-19, targeting either through the drug delivery itself, editing it in order to target only the cells that have the receptor for COVID-19, or also the second part that we are having designing like a synthetic biology circuit. It's more of an engineering part when we are designing a circuit, and then you can use it in order to cut like the genome of the virus itself. So it's really targeted, and we wanted also to work more about the diagnosis part and how we can take it from an enterprise view.
Rana, finally, you also led several teams for entrepreneurship and bioinformatics, right?
Yes. So
Tell me more about
basically,
this
I was more working towards like doing design thinking, either on boards that can solve issues and our own, like it's more of doing case studies in the university itself. So how we can like have better sustainability or sustainable like systems in the university, and then we were basically trying to develop this in order to have integrating boards that can be applied in the community itself as well. And then for the businesses, it's more a huge part that can be done in order to take the work from the biology labs, as I told you, into the business sector. So it's more of the easiest part I found, that we started from bioinformatics because it saves a lot of time in order to like research stuff and doesn't do it in the lab. So basically, when you are getting data and you are getting a lot of analyses, and the data analysis like field is growing a lot. So when you are using like biological data, that needs to be like really built here in order to have a lot of data sets and these stuff, and that's from where I worked on it. I worked on it both in AUC, for example, with my team, and I worked also through other internships with other teams from like African countries in order to solve problems like the cancer and the viruses and stuff.
Right, Rana Salah, research assistant at AUC. All the best of luck to you, my dear.
Thank you so much.
And dear viewers, with this we come to the end of the session of today's Youth. Don't forget to join us next week, same time. Good night, goodbye.